Now to India and a crusade to end child sex trafficking. Special correspondent Fred de Sam Lazaro traveled there recently to take a closer look at the issue and the often unsuccessful efforts to combat the practice. Tonight we have the first of his two reports. They are part of our Agents for Change series.
There was an unusual demonstration recently in this small town near India's border with Nepal. Unusual because these women, most with backgrounds in prostitution, are rarely seen in public. They protested social evils, from gender bias to the caste system, India's age-old social ladder in which they are at the very bottom.
In Bombay, in Delhi, in Calcutta, whichever red light area you go to, the girls and women are all low caste. Prostitution is passed down from mother to daughter and pimping from father to son.
Ruchira Gupta is a former journalist who started a group called Apne Aap, or On Our Own, which organized the rally. The group has rescued many of these women, found them new work in crafts and micro-enterprises, and put their daughters in school. Apne Aap was also part of a protest movement that followed the fatal gang rape of a Delhi college student 2 years ago, a campaign that got lawmakers to act against what many call a culture of rape and misogyny.
I am not going to allow this incident to become another statistic.
The law was changed to penalize traffickers instead of the women they traffic, recognizing the women as victims.
And it also says beautifully that the consent of a victim to her own exploitation will still put the blame on the perpetrator who used her consent to traffic her.
Marchers distributed flyers to inform people of the new laws and a victory by Apne Aap in a recent court case in the regional capital, Patna.
The court ordered that citizen committees be set up in every community in this region. These committees would gather data on every child up to 18 years old in these communities and essentially keep tabs on the welfare of these children. All this to ensure that no child is trafficked.
When I started work here 8 years ago, women could not look up. They used to cover their head and they were terrified of the traffickers beating them up. And now with the Patna High Court judgment, they feel they can change the whole system and eradicate trafficking from the roots.
Laws are only as good as their enforcement, however, as we would see just hours after the rally. Ruchira Gupta and a couple of Apne Aap staffers have come to this police station. It's just inside India along the Nepal border. They've learned that there are at least 2 young women who've been trafficked, and they're making final arrangements with the police to conduct a raid tonight to try and rescue them. The team met up with the police at 6 p.m. They hadn't told the police beforehand where they were going for fear the traffickers would be tipped off. But once they shared that information, they were asked to wait because the female officers who were to accompany them had been delayed. When the women still hadn't arrived 2 hours later, the raid proceeded anyway, hours after the planned start. 3 women from Apne Aap and 6 policemen.
This is probably the front room where the customers are brought in.
A few minutes later, they were in the local red light area and in a 3-room hovel where they suspected one young woman was being held. It was dank, dark, and deserted. Ruchira, what's going on?
I think the girl has been spirited away. We were kept waiting at the police station for 2 hours.
We suspect that they sent the information to the traffickers here because, as you can see, there's not a man in sight, which is very unusual in a red light area. That where are the pimps, where are the customers, where have they all gone? It's very, very odd.
Same thing a few yards away next door, a deserted home, evidence that this too was a brothel whose occupants had left in a hurry.
And it's almost as if someone has just run from here. Here are the beer bottles. Here is a crumpled blanket still on the bed, like just now.
Further in the courtyard, a door was padlocked on the outside of another home used as a brothel. The police were armed with big rifles, but they had no means to break the lock open. The task fell finally to a man said to be related to the building owner. Gupta suspected the occupants fled over the wall in the back when they heard the group arriving in the front. and she mildly admonished the policeman.
Going forward, when you do such raids, you should think about circling a home like this so that people don't have the opportunity to run away. And you folks are not gathering any evidence. Could you please tape some of this? Let me show you.
An officer duly followed Gupta but did not record anything. With the lock finally broken, they found a framed picture of one of the young women they were looking for. The man who let them in initially denied knowing her, but then relented and said he knew where she was being held. The police ordered him to produce her in 1 hour at the police station.
So he's gone off to bring the girl, ostensibly. Yeah. Do you think you'll see her this evening?
We are at the mercy of the cops, because if the cops want, we will see her. If the cops don't want, we won't see her.
Back at the police station, I asked Supervisor Ajit Kumar Singh the obvious question.
The suspicion immediately is that somebody, maybe from your own police force, has tipped them off.
He was more comfortable in Hindi, less comfortable with the question. He said he didn't have enough information but promised to investigate. The young woman never showed up at the station, but the female police officers finally did. Too late to have any effective role in the attempted rescue. There were no police vehicles available to get here from their base at another station, they complained.
I'm once again reminded why slavery still exists, because the laws are on paper and they are never implemented. And this is like just back to ground zero, where I've realized that the police, come what may, do not want to implement the laws on behalf of women and girls.
She says part of the job of activists is to educate an ill-informed, often ill-trained police force on the laws and then hold them accountable. In its 12 years, Apne Aap says it's helped some 21,000 women and young girls leave or not enter the sex trade. This is Fred de Sam Lazaro in Forbesganj, India, for the PBS NewsHour.
On tomorrow night's report, Fred goes on another rescue raid with a very different outcome. His reporting is a partnership with the Undertold Stories Project at St. Mary's University of Minnesota.